Let's put a smile on that face. Okay. Gah, I think I liked you better the other way. Today we're finally taking a long overdue look at some Christian Bale Batman head swaps. First, a few parameters. Since we are talking about a realistic version of Batman, I'm not going to be including any figures that are overly stylized, nor will I be looking at any figures that are kind of out there. I'm also only limiting myself to McFarlane Toys figures, so no DC Direct or DC Collectibles this time around. And just a reminder that figures like Hush or Three Jokers have an incompatible neck joint, so I can't do any swaps with them. With all that out of the way, let's jump in. First up, and here we have Ben Affleck as he appeared as Batman in the Justice League Snyder Cut. As we can see, size-wise they're compatible, so that's a great start. At a glance, I can't honestly say that I like this, but that's largely because I don't really like this head. Though I suppose beggars can't be choosers, mainly just because I don't like the goggles. There is a very expensive Chase variant where the goggles are lifted up, but that's not the same as not having any goggles at all. Other way around, on the other hand, and I really like this. It could be argued that the head sits a bit high, but as a more tactical version of Bale, I actually prefer this to the suit he had in The Dark Knight. And truth be told, I like this combination much more than I expected. Next up, and here he is with Robert Pattinson as Batman from 2022's The Batman. As we can see, the Pattinson figure is a hair taller, but I don't think it's going to matter that much. The Robert Pattinson costume is one of my favorite Batsuits. The only thing I didn't like on it was the head. Conversely, the Dark Knight costume is one of my least favorite Batsuits. To my eye, this combines the best of both worlds. Alas, I cannot say the same thing about this. The hand-sewn leather look of this cowl doesn't really match the rest of this armored body, and in general, this head's just too big. If the other way around was the best of both worlds, this would probably have to be the worst. For a comic-style Batman ripped from the pages of Dark Knight's death metal, and here we have the Punisher equivalent of Batman, also known as the Grim Knight. Size-wise, these two were very compatible. As famously anti-gun as Christian Bale's Batman is, this one's a very interesting departure. What if Batman really did go off the deep end and abandon his moral code? Fortunately, this is one of the better detailed McFarlane Batmans, so it feels a lot more realistic than some of the others that we're going to look at. Honestly, this looks pretty good too. Leastways, the size and colors match, and the face is fairly realistic. Leastways till you turn him sideways and his forehead disappears. Overall, though, I do like the design of this mask, and I would have loved the movie one to have been a bit more like it. Moving from movies to comics and now to video games is one of my favorite Batman figures, Batman as he appeared in Arkham Knight. The Arkham Knight is a little bit larger, but you'll notice that the heads are about the same size. If you were ever wondering what the Dark Knight would look like with longer ears, well, here you go. He doesn't look like any particular actor, but this Batman is realistic enough to pass for this costume. Doesn't really do it for me, but if it sparks your imagination, I'm happy to show you what it looks like. Other way around, and if the movies were going to give him armor, I wish it was a bit more like this. It could be argued that this head's a touch too small, but overall it does provide a very interesting what if. And to be honest, a lot of these design elements would make their way into the Pattinson costume anyway. Moving back over to comics, and here we have one of my favorite Batman figures to do head swaps with, Tim Fox's Batman from Future State. In terms of height and build, these two are very compatible. Just as I expected, this looks great. It's a more realistic design that feels like it could be an actual costume. The head matches up really well, and I really think this would be a great template for a live-action Batsuit. The other way around is really cool too. I always felt this costume had a kinda sorta motorcycle armor feel, and this helmet-style mask really works in its favor. The pattern lines and segmentations match up nicely as well. Sticking with both comics and also Future State, here we have Bruce Wayne as he appears as Dark Detective Batman. The figure is a bit bigger and bulkier than Bale. Had Bale's first attempt at a Batsuit been something a little bit less polished and more like this, I think it could have been really cool. Although not perfect, I'm surprised the skin tones match as well as they do. There is, however, one main issue with this design I don't think Christian Bale's Batman would have gone for. It's just a little too close to hockey pads.
What gives you the right? What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Other way around, and I know, the ears sticking out of the side look goofy. That said, I like this mask more than the one Bale actually wears. The hole for the jaw feels more like Batman, and the paneling works just fine with the costume's overall aesthetic. For the head swap that I've been the most excited to see, here we have Page Puncher's Batman based on the artwork of Lee Bermejo. Page Puncher's is just a hair shorter, but not enough to matter. Hands down, this is my favorite. As soon as I saw Bermejo's artwork, I knew that that's what a live-action Batman should be. It's the perfect balance between having a cloth costume and also having a tactical advantage. I really wish that the Dark Knight costume had been something more similar to this. At the very least, it can be on your shelf. The other way around is fine. In general, I do really like this head for swapping, so if you wanted to make it work for something, I do see some potential. From one Page Punchers to another, and here we have Batman as he appears in the critically acclaimed game Injustice 2. This figure has a very cinematic design, but is a little bit shorter than the first Page Punchers. Because the Injustice design already feels kind of like a spiritual successor to the Dark Knight suit, this really does match up nicely. Obviously the colors don't match, but had they given him a new costume in The Dark Knight Rises, this feels like it could have been a pretty natural evolution. Make the whole thing black and it could have been a really solid movie costume. Likewise, this head feels like it's straight out of a movie. The face underneath is just that realistic. I do wish that it had more of the jaw showing instead of the chin strap, and of course you'd have to repaint the head to match the rest of the body. Just watch out around the eyes, which have been very well done. For one last video game version of the Caped Crusader, and here we have the Dark Knight as he appeared in Batman Arkham City. Granted, this one's a bit more stylized, but I was still curious about it, and I'm sure some of you are as well. As I suspected, this one is just a tad too stylized. Still, there's a lot to love here. If you were able to do something about the proportions of the arms and legs, I think that this could potentially really work. Leastways, it shows how good an Arkham City Batsuit could look in live action. This way around, and it reminds me a lot of the Arkham Knight head swap, though I will say that the head is a lot better proportioned to the body. I like a long-eared Batman, but with this costume it does look kind of weird. But again, this video is for you and your creativity. And lastly, even though this figure is a bit stylized and has some questionable proportions, here we have Thomas Wayne as Batman from Earth 2. Seeing them side by side, you can really see what I'm talking about regarding those proportions. On the one hand, I do like seeing Christian Bale's Batman with a pop of red, and depending on the angle, I think it could look really cool, especially in pictures. But as a general custom, I do think that the long arms and short torso do make this look a bit too unrealistic. If you really like what you see though, I'm sure you could figure it out if you're willing to get creative. And speaking of getting creative, you would have to get a little bit creative with this too. Mainly because you would have to lower the head a bit and paint the eyes. Otherwise, if you like a long-eared Batman, I do think this is a pretty solid option. To be honest, I'd have loved to see how Bale himself would have looked in that cowl. For a bonus comparison, here we have Rebirth Batman. I say bonus because I forgot to include him when I was doing all those pretty spin-around turntable glamour shots. This one matches up a lot better than I was expecting. Don't get me wrong, the head still feels a little bit big, but Bale's Batman had a slighter frame, so this one is a bit more natural. If they'd gone for a more cloth-based costume in the movie, I think this is what it would have looked like. And I have to say, the other way around isn't bad either. Overall, this is a good head. The problem is that it's usually just too small. And while I do think that's still the case, here it just serves to make him look bulkier. Not sure why you'd want to do this combo, but if you did, it would work. Which combination was your favorite, and what other figures would you like to see me do a head swap party with? Sound off in the comments below. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about Venom. I just wanted to pick up a couple of extra figures first. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.